So today I'm going to be doing a quick unboxing and first look at the Asus M4A89GTD Pro motherboard. The biggest difference between this one and their other 890GX motherboard is that the other one has /USB 3. So the 890GX chipset is AMD's latest chipset for their Phenom 2, Phenom 3, Phenom Athlon 2, all of their different CPUs, okay? And what it brings to the table more than anything else is support for SATA3 6 GB per second. Now right now, SATA 3 and USB 3 are really hot features. Everyone wants to have them, but this chipset doesn't have integrated support for USB 3. So that means it's up to the motherboard manufacturers to build that in using a third-party chipset. So that's why this one does not include USB 3, but it does include SATA 6 GB per second support. And you can see, I think they're actually using completely the same box for these boards even. I don't think they've made they've made a couple changes. They've added a bar for USB 3 here, and then that's about it. So anyway, this is going to be fairly similar to the one we already did for the Pro/USB 3, but why don't we open this up and do a quick unboxing here anyway. So we've got an I/O shield, which includes their foamy padding at the back. Then we've got a user's guide, which also has a little addendum about the VGA switch card. So that's this guy right here. When you have one graphics card installed, you should put the VGA switch card into the other PCIe 16X slot, and that will allow the board to function properly. If you have two graphics cards in Crossfire mode, then it's fine to remove this and install another graphics card. Just make sure you don't lose it in case you ever want to go back to single graphics in the future. Next, we've got the driver DVD. Don't use this, install the latest off asus.com. Inside the user's guide, you'll find the usual stuff, including a motherboard overview, some basics on how to plug everything in. And I mean, Asus does a pretty good job of their motherboard manuals, so you should find everything you need in there. Next, we've got 4 SATA cables, including their cool, I'm guessing these are SATA, yeah, these are labeled SATA 6 GB per second cables. There's one straight and one right angle. And then for the regular SATA 2 cables, you've got one straight and one right angle. What I suspect is that the SATA 2 cables would work just fine for SATA 3 anyway, but there you go. These ones look cooler, so yeah. Next, we've got an IDE cable. And then we have their Q connector, so we have one USB and one for the front power, hard drive LED, reset switch, all that good stuff. Then let's get the board out itself. It seems like most of our viewers were overwhelmingly in favor of the cameraman's view on this chipset heatsink, so they do not think it looks like a tree or like a wave or like a green initiative sort of thing, so I stand corrected, I suppose. But let's have a look at the overall layout of this board. This is an AM3 socket. That means you've got support for DDR3 in dual channel configurations, so up to 16 gigabytes, I believe, would be the spec for this particular board. You've got a fair amount of room around the socket. You can see that these MOSFET and Northbridge coolers don't actually go up all that high, so if you're using like a good sized tower heatsink, you don't have to worry too much about there being any clearance issues there. Now let's keep moving our way around. You've got Asus's proprietary DDR3 DIMM slots, so that means that the one end here is not actually a clip, so you just slide the RAM in that side, put it down into the other side, and then clip it closed. Up here we've got our buttons for the Turbo Key 2 as well as the Core Unlocker. Now Core Unlocker is a huge feature for Asus's 890GX boards because the other manufacturers at the time of filming this video do not have support for Core Unlocking, and that's what a lot of people are doing with the lower end dual core and triple core AMD processors, is they're actually able to turn off or turn on the locked cores. So Asus has managed to get around AMD's restriction, and they have enabled that feature on their 890GX boards. Turbo Key 2 is kind of like what it sounds like, makes the board go faster. Okay, so MemOK is their technology to make sure that no matter what kind of RAM you're running in here, if you press this button, it'll set it to safe settings, which will allow you to post the board and configure it the way that you want. The 24 connector, as well as the 8-pin connector, are in their ideal locations at the right-hand edge and the top of the board. This is a really weird 8-pin connector. I've never seen one like this before. It's very tall. That is all. All right, so then let's move around. Here is the chipset itself. So that's where our SATA 6 GB per second ports, you can see they're labeled here. are running off of. So we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 SATA 6 gigabit per second ports. Here is your front panel hookups. Then you've got an IDE port right here. Here we have a ton of USB 2.0 connectivity. So you could hook up like a card reader, 4 front USB ports, and even like a fan controller, like a M-Cube T-balancer or something, and have them all hooked up all at the same time without any third-party cards. Then we've got our PCI and PCI Express slot layout. I really like this layout. You've got 2 PCIe 16X slots. Those are Crossfire ready. Then you've got a 1X slot as well as a PCI slot that would be covered by dual slot graphics. So after you got your Crossfire cards in, you have access to 1 PCI Express 4X slot and 1 PCI slot. I think that's a good mix for a board like this. Then let's move around to the back where we have the rest of our connectivity. Okay, so we've got a PS2 port, that's for keyboard. Then we've got 1, 2, 3, 4 USB 2.0 ports, but then it gets a little bit sketchier. So why don't we do this first and then we'll move over there. So we have 1 optical audio out, HDMI, DVI, VGA. Then we have a FireWire port, gigabit LAN, and 7.1 audio. Now here's where it gets a little bit more confusing. These 2 blue ports on the USB 3 model are actually USB 3 ports. They are not labeled USB 3 ports, and you can see that the USB 3 chipset is missing. So those are USB 2 ports. They are not USB 3, even though they are color-coded blue. This is also a USB port, but it is a USB 2/E SATA port. That means that both kinds of connectors will actually fit in here and will operate with this particular slot. You've got 7.1 audio as well as gigabit LAN, and thank you for checking out my unboxing of the M4A89GTD Pro, not USB 3.